Now you say you never inquired into the treatment of the prisoners. Why not?
We would watch them. They were held in a little holding area. And like I said earlier, they would cry for food and water, and we were told not to help them and just to stand there and stand guard.
Who told you not to give them water?
Our commanders.
Do you believe that was a lawful order?
Do I believe that was a lawful order?
Yes.
I know it's against the Geneva Conventions to do so.
So then it was an unlawful order and you participated in an unlawful order.
Objection, the prosecution is putting a witness on trial.
That's correct. Overruled.
I shall rephrase. If you knowingly did not give water and food to the prisoners, and you knew that it was against the Geneva Convention, why did you not do something about it?
Objection, the prosecution is asking the witness to incriminate herself.
Right, I understand that. But I know what the cross-examiner is trying to do here is to see if there was any, I don't want to say collusion, but allowing for an unlawful order to continue.
There was one point in which I tried to give a prisoner water, and it was made very clear to me that that was not to be made again.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you.
I'd like to bring to the witness stand former Secretary of Defense.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
William McNamara. My first question is, why did you change your stance on the war?
I wouldn't say that I advocated pulling out as much as I advocated a shift in policy after I left that office. In the beginning, I really saw it more as a numbers game, meaning one where in order to inflict enough casualties on the North Vietnamese, and if we were able to reduce their industrial capacity to resist, then we would be able to defeat them as we had conventional enemies in the past. This was my thinking, and I will concede that when I was in office as Secretary of Defense, I did make mistakes, and I did.
Objection. Is there exceeds scope of question and constitutes a volunteered statement by the witness?
Well, we all know that former Secretary of State McNamara was involved in the historical during World War II. That's a known fact. So I was going to ask the prosecutor, what is your level of questioning regarding all this? What are you getting at?
Well, he's an expert witness on the war since he was Secretary of Defense, and he's proving useful information.
Overruled. Continue.
So as I examined the scope of the war, and as I saw it was expanding, and as I saw that it was necessary to hit targets in Cambodia, and as I saw it was necessary to prosecute this war as a full military conflict, I realized that the domestic opposition was far too great, and our initial commitment had not been what, for example, we had in, say, the Korean conflict or the Second World War.
Do you think some of this also had to do with our backing of No Din Diem, that he was a weak leader and that maybe we should have possibly just continued supporting Bao Dai since he was the Emperor of Vietnam?
Sir, I will agree that mistakes were made in the administration of policies in the countryside in Vietnam. However, at the time, he was the best man we had to work with, and you have to understand that when you are pressed and you're on a time schedule, a time frame, you work with what you have.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Is there any cross-examination?
During your tenure in office, you said that you believed this was a war of attrition. Correct.
Initially speaking, no, but as it wore on towards the end of my tenure in office, yes, I began to see it as so, yes.
During your time in office, you did believe that this was effective in reducing the North's capacity to make war?
At the time I did.
And at the time, based on the information you had, with the recommendations that you made regarding Operation Rolling Thunder, Operation Ranch Hand, the search and destroy missions, you did believe that these were effective against the North? Is that true?
I believed it was effective to the extent of imposing our will on certain, even during...
1, 2, 3, 4! We know why you're sneaking around!
He sure he gets back here. Get them back in here.
We viewed the problem as first the conventional enemy of the North Vietnamese army and the South Vietnamese Viet Cong insurgency. We understood that by destroying North Vietnamese infrastructure, we would be able to perhaps slow down reinforcements of the South. But there were two separate solutions, one military, one political, at least at the time.
Counselor, excuse me, where is this leading us to?
I'm trying to establish that the United States was aiding an ally, that we were acting within our best interests and that the interests of South Vietnam.
The jury, I hope you're taking good notes on this. Do you have any more?
I have no
All right, you may be seated. All right. Would you people stand up back there? Stand up, please. One more outburst and you're going to get into the paddy wagon. Draft beer, not boys.
Make love, not war.
Right.
Make love, not war.
Okay. Would you show them out, please? Okay, thank you. Make sure they get back here.
Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
How effective were the search and destroy missions the American military implemented from 1965 to 1967?
First, it slowed the Viet Cong advances. Secondly, it put America back on the offensive in the eyes of the North Vietnamese. And thirdly, it restored land and power to the South Vietnamese government.
In regards to Count 4 now, that the United States left South Vietnam to deal with North Vietnam on its own, how prepared were the South Vietnamese when the United States government withdrew its military forces from Vietnam in 1973?
At the beginning of 1973, they had over 3 times as much artillery, twice as many tanks, and a virtual monopoly of the air. South Vietnam also had a combat troop ratio of 2-to-1 to the North Vietnamese.
Thank you. Can you explain what the United States did to aid the South Vietnamese before we withdrew?
Instead of dismantling its military bases, the United States transferred the titles to South Vietnam before the ceasefire was put into effect. Supplies were designated non-military and therefore were rendered eligible for transfer. The military advisory group was replaced by a civilian team of about 9,000 people. Many of them were quickly and honorably discharged from the military service and placed in employment of the government of Vietnam.
So you do believe that the majority of, or a good portion of the South Vietnamese army that was built before he left was built by the United States?
Yes.
And do you believe that the South Vietnamese, given their greater numbers and greater equipment and tanks, as we previously mentioned, do you believe that they were capable of fighting against the North Vietnamese?
Fully capable.
No further questions?
Can you hear me? Does this work? It's perfect.
General. How could you say that they were fully prepared for the North Vietnamese when they, after 2 years, they finally lost to them?
We left them with all the supplies they needed. Any other issue would be up to their government or their commanders.
It just seems unfathomable if basically that we didn't do enough because they did fall. And the repercussions of the many South Vietnamese that were killed by the communists who came in. And also we look at what happened in Cambodia with the killing fields and the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot. Isn't there anything more we could have done?
There's a lot more we could have done. In 1967, I gave a speech about the resolve of the United States government and the willingness of the government to give everything it needed in Vietnam. And I was interrupted 19 times by standing ovations. And the government did not follow through with giving me everything I needed and instead pulled things from me.
That's a real disappointment, actually.
Excuse me here, you're giving your own opinion there.
Well, no,
So,
I'm trying to, it's back.
yeah, I understand. Please don't argue with the judge. Time is up. You may be seated. Before you continue, I want to call the defense up to the bench for a minute. So, thank you very much. You may be seated.